Scene one, Apple, take one.
Hey everyone, I'm Shane Borza and welcome to this special edition episode of Film Notes. I'm very excited to have a friend of mine here I'm going to introduce in a moment, who is both an artist and an educator and a climber. Hence, we're out here on a portaledge at the end of the cliff, at the top of a cliff I should say, taking advantage of showcasing some of our kind of overlapping interests, but also how multi-hyphenates like myself and her will bring some of these things together to the betterment of each aspect of what we do. So I'm very excited to introduce here in a moment, but thank you for joining us on the ledge.
Hey everybody, my name is Michelle Przybylo. We are currently on a portaledge on top of a cliff here in Las Vegas. I am an artist, an educator, a climber, aerialist, all sorts of things. Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about how you got into what you're currently doing, and perhaps a story on each of those hyphenates that you mentioned.
I think that when it comes to being considered an artist, I would say I've always sort of felt that way about myself. I've always been really creative. I'd say my first love of any kind of art form would have been movement and dance. That started at a very young age. Very quickly it moved into a love for writing and reading and storytelling and that sort of thing. And probably around like that middle school era, I started writing poetry, and that was my main kind of art form for many years, and still to this day is an outlet that I use when it comes to my art. But I've also expanded into photography and modeling, painting occasionally, and so kind of just multimedia in that arena. When it comes to being an educator, I have also sort of felt like I've been that person for a really long time. I really fell into the role though when I retired from gymnastics at 18 and started coaching gymnastics, and learned that I have this knack for guiding and leading people through new skill sets and progressions and of that sort. So then when I retired, I ended up going to school to study psychology, and got into weightlifting and weight training, and very quickly started taking on some friends and helping them learn how to lift and all of that, which eventually led to me becoming a personal trainer, and then getting into functional movement due to my own experience living with chronic pain from my career as a gymnast, and finding corrective exercise, pain-free exercise, which is now the premise of my embodiment coaching practice. Yeah, I got into climbing because I was an athlete for so long and I needed another outlet. Weight training was cool, but it wasn't quite giving me the creative space to explore movement the way that I want to. I also have a passion for being outside. So I think climbing just fell into that realm. I had a friend, one of my best friends in fact, who lived in Alaska and traveled out west and came back to Chicago, which is where I grew up, and called me up and he's like, "You seem like you'd be interested in this." And I said, "Absolutely." And so we started going to the indoor gym, and then, eventually I said to myself, I want to go outside and I want to really take this on. So ended up, moving into a van and prioritized that part of the adventure, and then ended up here in beautiful Las Vegas to rock climb more fully and pursue my dreams and passions of being an artist and an embodiment coach, educator of all sorts. Yeah.
I got to know you through, I forget how I found you, but I stumbled upon one of your Instagram feeds, of which you have many, and I was like, wow, we have all these things in common. And one of the things that I find attracts me to people is, especially if they're doing some kind of art, hence your appearance on the show, but also having some kind of athletic background. And for me, those things really impact and kind of influence and inspire each other. So when you talk to me or talk to us about like living in a van and wanting to be a climber, but also pursuing your art. To me, that makes sense. But I wonder if you can explain to the audience, especially if people aren't like vagabond skiers or surfers or climbers or something, how those lifestyle choices can help you progress in your art, rather than what I think some people might assume is that it might stand in the way, because like there's only so much space you have in a van and there's only so much stuff you can do, or you might be moving around a lot or something. So talk to me about how not only the decision to commit to living in the van, but how that facilitated the next steps in your career, but especially in your art.
The living in the van portion of things, I was working as a bartender back in Chicago, and I'd met this woman named Zoe. She turned into one of my best friends. We ended up moving in together, and she ended up getting pregnant, and I was ready to leave Chicago. Her pregnancy sparked the need for her to move back to the central coast of California to be closer to her family. This was her first child, and she wanted like one last hurrah. She was known for being a vagabond, living out of cars. She's traveled back and forth across the country. So it kind of came to this place where, you know, she needed to go out west, and she wanted to do an adventure. So she was planning on, you know, buying some kind of vehicle and doing a long-term trip that way. And I was looking for a new place to live. And I hadn't been on an adventure like that in many years. And really, I wouldn't say I'd ever been on an adventure quite like that. I did do a lot of traveling, but nothing of that sort. And so that was really exciting for me as a type of explorer, I think, and a curious individual. So I agreed, and our lease was up, and it was perfect timing. And so we bought a van together, and we decided to move into the van and go from Chicago, and we went up through the Dakotas, and then, you know, southern Wyoming, Yellowstone, Coeur d'Alene, northern Washington, and then down the coast until we made it. We actually went all the way down California and then back up. How did that inspire my, you know, artistry and how to like pursue what I'm doing now? It's a good question. I think that the beauty of the open road is that you don't have as much as you think you need, right? You kind of just have exactly what it is that you need in that moment. And what that allows is for you not to be so distracted by all of this stuff all over the place, right? Like you wake up, and the only thing you really have to worry about is making sure that you're eating, that the, you know, whatever your sheltering situation is going to suit the weather that's happening that day, where you're planning on going or what kind of adventure you're on, and that's about it. And so I think that, you know, calming the mind of the hustle and bustle of the, you know, the waking up and the fitting of the schedule and making it to work on time and making sure you've got, you know, all these meals planned and that you're hitting all the points of whatever it is that you have to do, you know, all of that goes away, and you really only have to worry about eating and sleeping. And so that allows your mind to explore and wander and tap in. And then on top of that, you're living mostly off of the land, right? You obviously go to the grocery store and things of that nature, but you're living within forest preserves and national forest land and BLM land. And so there's not a lot around you, you know, there's not a lot of this like external technology stimulation. And also at the same point, kind of paradoxically, you're so stimulated by everything happening, right? Like the earth is such a beautiful thing, and to watch, you know, evolution happen before your eyes, especially being able to stay in one area for a long time, you start to be able to see the leaves change colors and the flowers bloom. And, you know, going to kind of more an extreme, I lived in Alaska for a little bit, and you watch the glaciers melt, and there's nothing more inspiring than that. And so I think that not only the space, but being able to slow down really opened up not only my creative endeavors and my flow state to get back into writing, but it also opened up my perspective to be able to see the world differently, and to be able to take in that image that I'm seeing and bring it, you know, bring myself behind a camera to capture it, to share with people, and then to facilitate some kind of writing that goes along with that. And then simultaneously, that slowdown allowed my body to relax, which helped me navigate some of my chronic pain. And when I realized that, I was like, oh my gosh, there's something to this where, everything I've always been told about my tendinitis and my joint pain and all this stuff is that I need to be stronger, I need to be doing more, I need to be, I don't know, they never really said resting more, but like eating more protein and drinking more water and more. And what I found was actually less was a lot more effective. And so not only did this adventure inspire me to feel more confident exploring new parts of myself through photography and modeling, and also venturing into new forms of writing and spiritual practice through that, but also it made me realize that you don't have to do so much to be okay and to be comfortable and to not struggle and to not suffer.
So I love hearing other people's journey, because of course I'm talking to an array of people that either work in the industry or adjacent to it, and a lot of us are hyphenates. If you are in a union, even quite often you're like, oh well, I'm a professional camera assistant, but then in indie shoots, like, you're the DP or the cinematographer, or maybe you produce stuff, or you're also a writer director or what have you. So quite often even a professional is wearing a lot of hats, and they are finding the inspiration from some of those things that fuel the other thing or what have you. So I want to get a little more into that with you and say, and of course, since I know you, I have seen your space where you're training people and you're making content. So talk to me a little bit about, now that you have a home base and have a place where you're working with clients and also making content, a little bit about how those things influence each other.
It's kind of interesting because I think I've always been more inspired by creating art than creating educational content. And so it's actually my clients that inspire me to create the educational content versus, me having an experience and then wanting to create that content because I think that somebody could find it useful. Whereas that's a lot more of my workflow when it comes to creating any kind of poetry or any modeling art. If I have a creative vision for a design that I want or a set that I want to model in, usually comes from a personal experience that I want to then express in an artistic form. Whereas taking clients, I can see and I can learn from their different perspectives and kind of pull what the common denominator is, find that common ground, and then create the content from there. And that way I've found that it feels more authentic for me because I know that what I'm talking about is not rooted in just my personal experience, but is rooted in probably my experience and all of these other people's experience. So having this outlet of content creation and also having the space to be able to make it allows for a sense of stability that you might not get when living on the road, for example, where you can actually execute, right? So I feel like the experience of being on the road and being an artist in that form and opening your mind and exploring and adventuring, that's where all the inspiration comes in. If you think about the artist's way, you think about the kind of the underlying topic that she talks about a lot of this ebb and flow of when you're being inspired and when you're being a student versus when you're being a creator and when you're putting out that work. And so I think that time frame that I had of those 2 years where I was just traveling and living out of a car and doing whatever I do, definitely I created during that time frame. And also it was very much an absorption space. And then now that I live in a stable home and I have the financial means as well as the sheltered stability of being able to create and the time frame to be able to do it all, I think really allows for the full vision to be expressed. So yeah, that's kind of how they all work together.
What are some key notes that you have learned, like hard-won lessons perhaps, or experiential, that you would like to pass on to help maybe inspire or make things easier for other people to make their art, regardless of what it might be, as well as what might be some notes for people who want to work with you, regardless of what capacity, like they want to hire you as a coach or they want to hire you as a model or whatever it might be. What are the notes for people to reach out to you and facilitate that kind of relationship as well?
A few lessons that I've learned over the years when it comes to, well, I think when it comes to anything that you're new in pursuing, whether that's art or career or entrepreneurship, really anything, there's going to be a period of messy action that's going to feel like a tornado, like you're in a tornado, and just ride that wave, because there's so much that comes from what I call being the earthworm. And that just means being a beginner. The beginner's mind is the greatest sponge. You haven't been jaded by experiences that have led you down certain paths that now you're kind of fixed in, right? So I think embrace that beginner's attitude. But even if you've been creating art for a really long time, when it comes to writing, I think for me, don't write for anyone other than yourself. And I think that can translate into any kind of modeling. Whether you're a model hiring a photographer or you're a photographer hiring a model, you want to be creating for yourself, right? Not for anyone else. Because the minute you start to think about other people, you start to second guess yourself, and you have all these, judgments that come through, and ultimately you want to follow your gut and you want to follow your intuition, and that's what's going to show, and that's what people are going to be able to feel through your art. And so that, I think, even translates into my coaching practice and how I choose to educate my clients, is that I'm not working, I shouldn't say I'm not working for you, but I'm working with you. And it's not me creating, or it's not me helping you and telling you what to do so that you feel better. It's me understanding you to be able to facilitate the information that you're going to need to help you progress in the direction that you want. And so kind of that transitioning into the next question, when it comes to working with some kind of embodiment coach, or you struggle with chronic pain and you want to hire someone, whether it's a somatic therapist or an embodiment coach or a physical therapist, you want to make sure that you understand where your pain is. You want to have an understanding of how that happened to you, right? And where it comes from. And even if you don't have a deep subconscious maybe understanding, like having a list of those injuries or experiences that may impact your life, you want to be realistic about your lifestyle. Don't be hiding anything, right? Because it's all going to come out as the sessions move through, because so much of this is, mind, body, soul. And that's another thing, I guess, coming into back to what could you look for when you're hiring some kind of a coach, or you're hiring a model, or you're hiring a writer. What is the philosophy you're looking for? And do they fulfill that philosophy? Do you resonate with that holistic mindset, or would you prefer someone who's going to be more by the books, very scientific, working in a strict progression? Do you want someone more intuitive, right? I think all of those things are important to have a deep understanding of before you choose to work with somebody. And then obviously being able to communicate those needs and those boundaries before you move into that workspace process. I think another thing is going back to kind of touching in on that communication factor. Whether you're a model or you're in any kind of co-creation, collaboration process with somebody as a creator, you have to be able to communicate your vision. And that, I think at the beginning can be really challenging for people, because maybe they don't know their vision. And again, it's that messy, it's that messy tornado process. But the more you work on pinpointing, even if it's just 1 or 2 things that you're looking to achieve, those 1 or 2 things turn into 3 and 4 things, and then turn into 5 and 6 things. And then you learn that 1, 2, and 3 are constants all the time. And, 4, 5, and 6 can be more malleable. And so kind of allowing yourself to understand that process. I think all of those are important things to think of, not just when you're hiring an artist, but also when you're hiring any kind of coach or trainer or educator or mentor, anything of that nature.
Where can people connect with you, follow you, whether it's your coaching practice or seeing some of your art or what have you? If there's a way to showcase any product you have that you really want people to see, whether it's an offering you have or like something you've made.
The biggest portfolio of where you could find my art would probably be Instagram. My handle is @metal, like METAL _Meesh, MEESH, and that's going to showcase my photography, my modeling, I put a little bit of some dance work on there, so some movement flows, as well as my writing. You'll be able to find all of that there. I do post a little bit of the embodiment work that I do on that page as well. So, but the majority of that page is going to be art focused. I do have an Instagram page for my business, which is @livethequestion_wellness. And that's going to be the page where you can find all of the educational content for what it means to be an embodiment coach, for living pain-free, living with chronic pain, etc., etc. So that's all really fun. And then if you wanted to get in contact with me, there are email links on both of those. But if you prefer a website, I have livethequestion.fitness is a great place to get into contact with me through that space. And you can learn more about what I do and how I do it, read my story a little bit more through that website. And lastly, really excited, I will be putting out a poetry book here in the next few months. And so all that information will be posted on the Instagram pages, so you can stay tuned through there. Thanks for watching.
If you'd like to support the show, please click on the link below. You can also contact me at my website if you have any questions about filmmaking or anything else. Off to the side, you'll see a couple of my books, Film Notes and the Film Notes Workbook. I encourage you to check those out if you'd like to learn more about filmmaking. See you in the next episode.
Scene 1, Apple, take 1.